for a generation that has grown up, especially since 1997, that's the sort of advent of Generation Z. I was born in 1998. Ever since Tony Blair revolutionized the country with his immigration and constitutional reforms, they have known no other world except the culturally and ethnically heterogeneous multicultural Britain. And so questions of immigration, identity, ethnicity, and belonging are just as present and salient to them as questions of economics were to their predecessors. And there is cause for pessimism here, I must say. So in the last few years, ever since Brexit was achieved, despite the overwhelming majority of people who voted leave having immigration and decreasing it or outright stopping it been their number one issue, despite 90% of constituencies when polled in Britain wanting lower levels of migration, despite an overwhelming level of support for returning many people who have not integrated, who impose undue costs on the taxpayer, who commit completely preventable crimes, many people wanting them to return home, in every election, when they have voted against migration, we have been punished with higher levels of migration instead. And especially since Boris Johnson won in 2019, we have received total migration of over 1 million every year for the last 4 or 5 years. We have taken in predominantly from the third world, non-European migrants, well over 4 million people. And that's not even counting the over 150 to 180,000 illegal migrants who have crossed by small boats over the English Channel and smuggling themselves aboard lorries since 2018. So we have had a complete demographic, cultural, and economic revolution in the last few years. And it's very present, not just in the number of crimes that have been committed, not just in the 14.4 billion minimum spent on illegal migration out of the foreign aid budget every single year, but just in the aesthetic changes, the world on your doorstep feeling unfamiliar, the strange adverts being shown on the tube now, the number of people with different civic sense to the British and the Western Europeans who will, just blare music aloud on the bus or shout into their speakerphone, and just creates a slightly unpleasant country. And the reason for pessimism here is not just because of the grit thrown in the engine of state when anyone like Katie Lamb or Robert Jenrick or Rupert Lowe suggests maybe these people who have come here in the last few years who aren't contributing culturally or economically to our country, who were brought in, frankly, under false pretenses against the wishes of the electorate, could return to their homes with relatively little upheaval, but also because there have been people who have been settled in Britain for generations who do not consider themselves British in the civic sense of identity that the likes of Konstantin Kisin does, or my friend Ayaan Hirsi Ali would, as a custodian of British culture despite not being born in that land. Instead, they see themselves as having ethnic and religious interests that are hostile to and incompatible to the host majority. The worst example of this is, John, after October the 7th, the Henry Jackson Society and JL Partners polling did some polls to find out British-born Muslims' attitudes to Jews, the October the 7th massacre, and whether or not they should have sectarian politics in their country. And they found that 3/4 of British-born Muslims, or Muslims living in Britain, did not believe Hamas committed murder and rape on October the 7th. So they just believed that Hamas did absolutely nothing wrong on that atrocious day. 52% wanted to criminalize depictions of their Prophet Muhammad, and a third wanted Sharia law to supersede common law and obviously human rights law, the sort of rat's nest of various competing legal doctrines that had been set up since the Second World War. And they wanted Islam to be the official state religion of Britain. I think the Church of England might be joining that in that project at the moment. But that is most concentrated among second-generation, British-born, university-educated Muslims aged 18 to 30. So those who have integrated, apparently, according to the most number of interactions they've had with the British state that extols British values in the version that was set forth in 2014, they are the least integrated and the most hostile.